Well, let's look at the impact of the ANC's re-election of party president Cyril Ramaphosa on the market. The rand jumped on the news on the news that he has been reinstalled as president of the party. Let's discuss this now with Pan-African Investment and Research Services CEO Dr. Iraj Abedian. Good evening to you and welcome tonight. How much did the markets pin its hopes on a Ramaphosa win?
I think, thank you very much for the invitation and greetings to our viewers. The market was obviously very nervous in the event that the Ramaphosa camp doesn't win, and that will introduce a great deal of uncertainty and reverse a lot of what would have and up to now has been largely market-friendly talk, at least. Not much action, but some talk. So the market was nervous, and on the news of his re-election, and not only his own re-election, but also his slate or his faction within the ANC, the market took warmly to it. The rand appreciated. But of course, the rand, much like many other currencies at the moment, they are gyrating because the global economy, financially and economically, remains very, very unstable.
Somebody, in appraising where the ANC is right now, first of all, we had, a really sobering conversation with the former Statistician General, Dr. Padi Lehotla, on this policy trajectory that the ANC, or that Treasury is on, largely informed, of course, by the direction in which the ANC wants to go. Not working for South Africa in terms of unemployment, in terms of job prospects, and in terms of significantly having a boost on our GDP going forward. Given that that is the case, is it similar to what Professor Adam Habib just told us on the program, that the selection of Mr. Ramaphosa was the selection of, the best amongst a bad bunch? Is this the market and the investor community just making do with what we have on the table, or is this really the best scenario that South Africa has at its disposal?
Definitely. I agree that it's the best of a worst bunch that we can choose from. There's a lot that has to be done, has been neglected for literally 15 years, and the consequences of it is for everyone everywhere to see, the poor, rich, and the middle class. The working class obviously has been the biggest losers. They've lost their jobs. The economic potentials are completely neglected, and the ANC is either talking all kinds of irrelevant policy talks, or some even worse, they know what should be done, but they don't do it. And that's really a very, very concerning and very destructive way of governance. Government, I have said it before, has become an obstacle to economic growth and development, which is highly unfortunate.
So given that is the case, and in a sense, unless something there's a radical diversion from the ANC's current economic policies and indeed, social and other policies read collectively that impact South Africa's social and economic life, nothing is going to change. We've seen some changes with army deployment, some changes at Eskom, the installation of a board, but of course, the resignation of its CEO, and we're expecting, others in the C-suite as well to vacate their posts. This is one of the most concerning aspects and threats to our economy right now. Was enough said, and was there enough sort of confidence raised about the ANC to circumnavigate this crisis effectively?
I think we need to separate two things. One is the market. Financial markets seldom care for the real actual lived reality and experience of the nation. So they are worried about their own book. And therefore, if you see the rand responding and the investor sentiments changing, does not mean that they are worried about the reality of what affects the welfare of the nation, especially that of the poor. So, and that's a very, very important point. The second point is it's not true with respect to say nothing is happening. Every day that we do not do the right thing, only one thing happens: the general decline in the standard of living of all South Africans, the rich and the poor, but particularly the poor and the marginalized. So it is no comfort to say that just because unemployment in one quarter to the next goes up from a low base by another 300,000-400,000, it's not a dent in millions of unemployed that have no real prospects. Many poor as the president and everybody else has said, over a third of our population at the moment can only live month to month on national welfare. This in itself is an indictment on failure, spectacular failure of policies of government right across. Therefore, we need to sit back and really take on board, heart and mind, that every day that we don't do the right thing, we condemn millions of South Africans into a life of poverty, not just now, but in 5 and 6 years to come. This is something that we cannot just leave it to politicians. It requires clearly a national participation of one kind or another, and to awaken the government, that this government is really living in a vacuum of its own, discussing policy options, arguing, slating, and factioning. In the meantime, Rome is burning. Our joblessness is hopelessness, and we have to be very, very, very careful and concerned about that.
I mean, it's interesting that you remind us that the financial markets are largely agnostic to lived experiences and, are emotionless or dispassionate when it comes to, empathizing with the plight of millions of people. And given what you say now, Rome is burning, and we're in a complex cocktail of crises. What do you think we needed to have heard from this conference? Of course, the contestation around the elections, as you say, was feverish, and it was all that we talked about for a long time. But given this dire situation that we are in, what do you think people like yourselves, who are market watchers, and the investor community needed to have heard from a leadership and policy decisiveness position out of this gathering that's just pretty much closed now?
I think the gathering made all the observations, literally counting all the symptoms correctly, but it failed totally to say, this is how we're going to turn it around. I would have liked to hear from the gathering that we have failed, we acknowledge, but we learned, and we're going to do things differently. To repeat the same stuff 10 years, 15, 20, 25 years, again and again and again, is the symptom and the sign of a non-learning political leadership and a non-learning organization. An organization that fails to learn, repeats its mistake, and is oblivious to the consequences for itself as an organization and for the nation that it governs and hopes to govern.
Dr. Iraj Abedian, thank you for your time this afternoon. We appreciate it. Iraj is the CEO of Pan-African Investment and Research Services. We take a break and back straight off.